At the end of the 1800s, Americans were fed up with lawlessness. As the rule of law advanced across the land, the robbers, rustlers, and gunfighters receded. In fact, it went so far as having the 11th U.S. Census essentially stating the frontier was largely settled. With the heavy use of barbed wire and the expansion of railroads, it signaled a death knell of the old American West. A period of great independence and freedom was no longer guaranteed. Instead, that former lifestyle began drifting like a tumbleweed across a dusty plain.
Howdy, partner. This is a Quickstrike AAR report from Coffeyville, Kansas, 1892. So in 1892, Coffeyville, Kansas had a pretty sizable population for its time. It was a southern cattle drive town. In that town, or close to it, lived the Dalton family. The Daltons, some of them actually grew up there, and Emmett even went to school there when he was a youngster. So Emmett was not fond of coming back to this town, but his brother Bob insisted and wanted them to wear disguises because Bob came up with a very creative plan. Bob wanted to rob not just one bank, but he wanted to rob 2 banks. He even said that the reason he wanted to do this was he wanted to beat anything Jesse James ever did. Well, you got to give the guy credit for bravado. So something has to be pointed out to you at this point in the game. Instead of 5 bank robbers, for this scenario, we have 10. The reason why? Number one, there were 2 gang members that were essentially wasted during the portion of this robbery, guarding a couple horses on the outskirts of town, which basically did nobody any good. Number 2, they were arguing about the amount of personnel on the way to the robbery and where those personnel should be positioned. It was essentially an exercise in futility to do anything with Bob, to argue with him. However, Emmett kept trying all the way up until the morning of the robbery itself. Number 3, while doing the research for this, I found that there were suggestions that a 6th man was out there somewhere in the ether and may have been a factor in this particular battle. So there's a lot of reasons to suspect that if they had a bigger force, they might have been able to succeed. And I know fans of Little Wars are big fans of what-if scenarios. This one is extremely plausible, and anybody with half a brain should have figured out that it would have taken more than 5 men to rob 2 separate banks in a town where they might have been recognized, and recognized they were. So enough talking. Let's get into the actual battle. We have 10 robbers who are taking on Coffeyville, Kansas in 1892. But the townspeople have other plans. So at the start of our scenario, we have 5 robbers here at this bank. We have 5 robbers here at this bank. But unbeknownst to them, they've been spotted, even through their masterful disguises of basically a bunch of fake beards. They were spotted, and people said, hey, the Daltons are robbing the bank. Those people started gathering here at Isham's Hardware, represented by the trading post in our scenario. You can see the townspeople just starting to form over there. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a series of die rolls. These are essentially homebrew rules, and there were a couple of encounters prior to this happening, a few people that they encountered in the alleyways. That's about to take place now. So in our scenario, the first person to fire is Lucius Baldwin. We're going to see how he fares in just a moment. So after turn 1, we've lost 1 townsperson who's been wounded. And we also lost Lucius Baldwin, who was also wounded, but not nearly as bad as the town person. So far, the townspeople aren't doing so well, but they're just getting started. These boys are still in the bank. It's been about 1 minute into the robbery. They're waiting for the safe to open. They have to wait in our scenario because They have 10 mouths to feed, and it's very important for them to get the hands on the gold. Round 2 has come and went already with surprisingly little carnage. The guys at the bank were relatively unharmed. They were busy dodging bullets. The townspeople were also busy dodging bullets, but nobody got hit. And our second group of bandits is now on the move again. The end of turn 3 is very significant. For one, the townspeople are starting to now fire back, and slowly more townspeople will be added because historically they went into Isham's Hardware and started grabbing more and more guns. We also have our first wounded bandit. He's outside the bank. The bank has now been successfully robbed. It's 9:30 a.m. The bandits have the gold and they're on their way. One other thing to note is our bandits at the far end are also going to follow the historical path. A die was rolled, and what they're going to do is circle around the end of the town, while this other group of bandits is going to go straight for the alleyway. So now, turn 5 has been devastating for our bandits. They lost 2 good members of their posse, and they were absolutely eliminated in cold blood. So we have a couple of dead bodies littering the streets over here. We also have this group, which is now fading behind the building, and they are going to be out of sight and out of mind for a couple minutes here. So in turn 6, we have the bandits basically completely eliminated. We have a lot of the townspeople injured, about 7 injuries. However, historically, that was not too bad. We have Joe Unkefer shooting from the rooftop, in that case, the second story of the Savings and Loan Bank. So he actually got a shot off. And then we have Joe Clore, one of the marksmen, took out Arville Beck at the end. So in just a minute, I'm going to do a final summation and tell you what the butcher's bill was for this particular battle. So in the case of Coffeyville in 1892 and the escape from Coffeyville, the actual bandits did better than they did historically. In this particular case, the townspeople, there were only 7 wounded and no deaths. Originally, 4 people died in the original battle. Even though there was a lot of wounds, none of them were really incapacitating either, which was kind of a surprise to me. So you would think with more guns being fired, there'd be more townspeople killed. But a lot of them decided not to attack based on their historical roles. So luck may have had a little bit to do with it there. As far as the Cowboys, they actually did better than expected as well. And with the Cowboys, we had Bob Dalton, Bill Powers, Texas Jack Broadwell, Charlie Bryant, and Arville Beck all slain for a total of 6. There's also one more that I was missing. Bill Doolin. Yeah. So Bill got it too. So with this in mind, it is actually a victory for the Cowboys because even though they didn't get away with the gold, they did get away with 4 people instead of historically losing virtually everybody who was involved in the robbery. So in this particular case, it was a Cowboy victory. You might argue that it's pretty narrow, but in this particular case, I was still surprised by how well the Cowboys did. And it all boiled down to that one essential role where they decided to continue as they did historically and go around that town instead of cutting across the front like the Cowboys did in the beginning, who got slain. So maybe Emmett Dalton was right, and Grat Dalton shouldn't have been in charge of that crew. If he had, things might have turned out differently all the way around. I guess we'll never know. I want to thank my wife for helping with the painting of the miniatures. I want to thank Little Wars TV for helping me get this video up and running. I hope you had a good time, and I hope I see you again on Standalone Gaming. Have a great day, partner.